good, Mark. It sounds like we're getting real close to getting an announcement on the offensive coordinator hire. So anticipate something there very soon. And boy, I was gotten a lot of really good announcements as it relates to what you said. Guys coming back for extra COVID years or just fifth years. It really is incredible what they've been able to do. And I made the comment yesterday when talking about Nick Jackson's return. And he's able to come back because the NCAA approved a waiver for him to play an extra year. He's got an opportunity to be the NCAA's all-time leading tackler. Think about that. Because of this extra year, he could accomplish that feat. So we'll have to do that. I think he needs like 120 tackles next year or something crazy. So I guess my point is, like, they're getting so many people back. And obviously Cooper's gone, and that's the unfortunate part of this. But they may not have to go to the portal. I mean, they may go to the portal. Obviously, they've shown some interest, obviously, at a quarterback position over the last couple of years. We saw two guys brought in a year ago, and this year they obviously struggled that position with Cade's injury. There was rumors that they were interested in Ty Thompson from Oregon. He quickly committed to Tulane. But my point is, like, they got so many guys back and no scholarships to give out right now, unless more people leave. They've got their roster pretty much situated.
You piqued my interest. I'm a nerd for these kind of things. And so when you say has a shot at becoming the all-time tackler in the history of college football, then boom, I got to go to the stats. 100 plus tackles, of course, 4 consecutive years. And of course, prior to 1972, players could not play as freshmen. So that was a huge factor. And then, of course, the seasons have only been getting longer, with 11 games played for most of my youth, and then 12 games kicked in about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and now 13 and beyond conference championship games in the whole deal. So he just played a 14-game season. So that has certainly helped the modern player accumulate stats. 462 tackles.
What's crazy is, am I right in saying this, Mark, that had he played, if he had been a freshman in 2018, he could have played 4 games in 2018, and this would have been, he'd have been going into his 7th year. Am I right in saying that?
Yes.
Because he got the free COVID year. He would have had the redshirt year in 2018, and he'd have the waiver year because of the Virginia situation. That's insane.
Alan Bowman's the quarterback at Oklahoma State. He's coming back next year for a 7th year.
So what was the situation there? He was obviously 2018, but is that kind of what happened there? He had how do you even get 7 years?
Probably. That's probably what it is, would be a freshman or a red shirt plus the COVID year. I don't really know. I know he's played at 3 different schools.
I'm assuming he got a medical red shirt then in a different year, would be my guess. Like he played in a couple of games or a few games and then got a serious injury and then took a medical because he'd be done. I mean, even if the COVID year and that's the thing, this coming year, these are 6th year guys that were freshmen in 2019. I don't know. It just feels like everybody's getting 6th and 7th year. And I don't mind. I mean, guys like Nick Jackson, this is great for Iowa. Don't get me wrong. He's probably the best player they got last year in the transfer portal. So for him and Jay Higgins both to be coming back now, how do they replace somebody like Cooper DeJean? Big question mark. They did play the latter almost half of the season without Cooper DeJean. So, there's that. They're going to be really, really good next year. I mean, preseason, I'm not some national guru like you, Mark, but, based on their numbers this year and what they return, probably a top 5 defense preseason. I don't know why they wouldn't be nationally.
I had a long brainstorming session going back and forth between naming voice of college football, guru of college football. I was really weighing that out.
I think voice of college football is good.
Okay. All right. There is a tight end for Miami who is petitioning the NCAA for a 9th year.
I didn't even know that was possible. So
yeah, I don't ask me for the particulars, but as soon as you went down that path, I thought, I know there's a tight end for Miami who's going for a 9th year, and I just looked it up. Cam McCormick going for a 9th year. Back to the Hawkeyes. Yes, outside of Cooper DeJean, these are all good decisions for the Hawkeye fans.
Yeah, they're 5 over the scholarship limit right now. 5. So they got to trim things down by the time you hit fall camp. Now they got some time to do that, but somebody's going to have to leave. Somebody on scholarship is going to have to leave. So who's that going to be? Well, they got to lose several of them. And it does sound like Quinn Schulte's back, as you put in your headline. He hasn't made an official announcement, but the university basically said as much yesterday on social media. And Nick Jackson is coming back as well. So yeah, there are 5 over the limit. I hate to try to guess it as far as who might leave. I'm guessing that once we hit spring, there'll be some underclassmen that want to get out, just because that's kind of the era that we play college football in today, is just guys leave very early. And, what positions I think running back would be one that I've brought up several times. I just can't imagine a scenario where they retain all these guys. I know Caleb Johnson has said on social media that he's a Hawk, and, it's hard to imagine LaShawn Williams leaving, given the fact that he was probably their best back this year. Jazz Patterson's numbers dwindled, especially in the Citrus Bowl. He didn't play hardly at all, but he has not announced. So, are these guys waiting until spring to see what happens? That's possible. Iowa actually played Terrell Washington Jr. and Kamari Moulton in the Citrus Bowl as well. So basically played 5 guys. They've got a couple of people coming in next year, Brevin Dahl being one. And then they got a kid out of Illinois whose name escapes me at halfback as well. So, the thing about it is, they've got time to do this. I think this is Kirk and the staff kind of just relying on the likelihood of players leaving. Like, Kirk is not one to ask guys to leave. I mean, in general, he's not going to kick guys off scholarships. And I know there's guys around the country who are happy to do that. That's not Kirk's style. So I think this is the staff's way of saying, hey, this is just the nature of the game now. Guys will leave, but we cannot say no to people with the production of Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson and, Luke Lachey. Some people I saw on social media, we don't want Quinn back. Why are we getting Quinn Schulte back? He's a multi-year starter at safety.
Why? Don't want him back. He's a really good player.
They want the next guy. There was that highlight play from Cohen Entringer where he missed the tackle in the Big Ten championship game and then ran 90 yards the other way. And so they want Cohen. They believe that means Cohen Entringer is the best safety. So play him. Well, that doesn't mean anything. Like, it was a great effort play, but obviously there's a reason why Quinn Schulte has been successful. And I get it. He doesn't look the part. He's probably not going to be an NFL starter someday, but no, a lot of respect from his teammates, and very smart young man. Has been very productive. He's hardly been noticed out there, which is probably a good thing when you're talking about the position that he plays. So to get those guys back. And then how about the guy we haven't brought up? Sebastian Castro's coming back. I did not think that was going to happen. I just thought it was going to be hard for him to improve his stock. Apparently he thinks he can improve it a lot. I think the comment was made here less than a month ago when Sebastian was asked about prospects in the NFL draft. He said, hey, I'm basically a late round guy. People didn't know who I was a year ago. And I want to come back and, vault up the ladder. Maybe he'll do that. I think size-wise, he's got some disadvantages at 5'11". He's not the biggest. But, boy, the guy can lay a hit. And it's going to be interesting to see how he – now that they have him back, the battle – I think the position battle at cash and at safety in 2025 is going to be fascinating because they have so many young guys – with Schulte and Sebastian Castro, so many young guys behind that core, and Xavier Wampa behind that core. It's like Cohen Entringer, or is John Nestor a corner? They signed Rashad Godfrey this year, who I think could be a potential cash guy. Khalil Tate's a guy that I know they were excited about in the 4.25 last cycle. So lots of cool storylines, but this takes a lot of pressure off of portal recruiting right now.
Did Xavier Wampa show the kind of promise that he's supposed to? Did he deliver and progress as a first-year player for you?
Well, keep in mind, this is his second year. This was his second year.
Okay.
So, again, didn't notice him a whole lot. There were not very many flaws as a whole for this defense. I think a lot of people thought that Xavier would be, laying huge hits and creating tons of turnovers. We didn't see that out of Xavier Wampa. I don't remember a bunch of plays where he got beat. I do think, and I'm no defensive coordinator, I do think the Phil Parker style, it seems like it creates more turnovers for the corners and the linebackers and the D linemen than it does for safeties. Typically, at least that's history. If you look at Kayvon Merriweather, is another guy that people were raving about his athleticism, and he had a good career here, but never was this tremendous ball hawk type of guy, as opposed to in the Norm Parker era, Brett Greenwood, Tyler Sash, those guys put together incredible seasons led by turnovers. So, maybe that's just a theory. I wouldn't be shocked. I made this comment when Sebastian announced he's coming back. Maybe Xavier Wampa's a candidate to move down to cash once Sebastian leaves. Maybe just because of his athleticism, his size. Now, maybe not, but I thought that would have been a possibility had Sebastian left. But, they don't have to deal with that right now. I'm sure Conan Tringer, I know people are excited about him because of like we said, the big play in the Big Ten championship game. And they got some other younger guys, but they'll have to wait.
Have any of these players, when they've made these announcements that they're sticking around, said anything that's caught your ear out of the ordinary besides just the typical complimentary statements? Because this is quite a few guys that are opting to come back that have NFL futures.
No. First of all, the universities are teaming up with these kids to make these announcements. And so basically the university is posting this information for them with like one-liners like I'm back or not done yet or whatever. So we're not really getting statements. The only statement we've really gotten is from Cooper DeJean, who declared for the NFL draft. I will say this. People need to recognize something very plain as day. All right. The Iowa collective, whether you like NIL or not, the Iowa collective has had a big part in bringing these guys back. So I can say with a fair amount of confidence, if it weren't for the efforts of the Swarm and NIL and Brad Heinrichs, who's the CEO of the Swarm, and all the people who have donated, are members of the Swarm community. Specifically, though, I think it is the bigger name donors that funnel money there that can, these guys are all getting money each and every year. We've talked about that initiative, but now here, opportunities to bring guys back for extra years. A big part of that is funding from NIL, based on what I've been told. So I'm not telling people to sign up and be members or give large sums of money, but there's a good chance that if the Swarm wasn't there, I don't know how many guys have they got back? 5 so far, 6, counting right. They may get half of those or less if it weren't for the Swarm. And that's okay. I mean, let the kids like Quinn Schulte. I don't know. I can't say what he's making as a super senior here. And I know a lot of Iowa fans kind of have mixed feelings about a young kid who probably doesn't have NFL aspirations, but I guarantee you Kirk and Phil value his coming back. And it's worth the NIL punch, if you will, to be able to get him to come back. He's been described as a coach on the field in that defensive backfield. So it is interesting that there haven't been a lot of statements, quote unquote, but that might be part of the reason.
There are several sources that have come out since the end of the season or the transfer portal, the latest window, about $1.5 million to $2 million per year being the going rate for a top level quarterback in the portal. So you haven't come across, with all your sources there at Iowa, just not that I want you to throw out numbers just sporadically that don't mean anything, just as a guess, but we don't have a real good feel for what these numbers could be.
I can tell you that these guys who are coming back are getting substantial NIL dollars. I mean, it's substantial. I can't be specific, and I have not been given specific numbers on each guy, but been given kind of a range, and I can't really relay that range, but I'm just telling you it is substantial. So, and I think some people don't realize how much money there is available. But at the same time, Brad Heinrichs and the Swarm would say, you don't realize how much money there is all around the country with these NIL initiatives. We need more. We need more money. We need more donations. We need more signups. So all that can be true at the same time. But, some of these, here's the other problem. And I made the comment, I think it was yesterday. This is something I can tell you is happening. And it's not just at Iowa. A lot of these players, whether they're upperclassmen or underclassmen, especially once they get into a position of leverage where they're playing, these kids have got NIL agents. And in some cases, these agents, first of all, they're businessmen, right? And they're negotiators. So with the era of the transfer portal, a lot of these agents are making attempts to pressure either the institution or specifically the NIL initiative, and using the leverage that is that player's playing time to get more money. In layman's terms, you could have a situation, I'm not saying this is specific with anybody at Iowa, but there are situations going on around the country where an agent goes to the school's collective leader or the school's head coach and says, look, such and such a school is offering us 400 grand for our kid here to transfer. What can you do? And basically these collectives / administrations, really the coaching staff and the administrations are not supposed to be involved with this, but basically the other side of it, the institution side of it, the NIL side of it, is having to either A, call the bluff, or B, match the dough. So that's a whole new, it's a weird situation, but that is where we're at, Mark. I mean, people need to realize that is where we're at. And it's happening. It's not just happening with the big names. It's happening with a lot of people. And again, I'm not talking about anybody specifically at Iowa, but just in general, all these players in college football, almost all of them, have agents, and those agents are out to make their clients money and make themselves money. So they're going to leverage people, and there's a lot of tampering going on. And if you consider that tampering, which it is, too bad. That's what's happening.
Speaking of business, folks, we can certainly benefit your business. We can partner together if you would like to sponsor here at the Voice of College Football on the Iowa show in particular, but any of the shows, but in particular, of course, our Hawkeyes live show here each and every Tuesday. Hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Yeah, it's a strange world, and it has to be reined in, and there have to be rails, and there have to be guidelines, because much of what you just laid out is similar to what happens in the NFL, but all of it's legitimate, and that it's happening within a structure, and that the money offers on the other side are legitimate. Nobody's fraudulent in a fraudulent way throwing out dollar figures to free agents or anything. It's all real money, and it's all on the up and up. Not saying that there aren't less than scrupulous things that go on in the NFL, but in terms of the business, it's all structured, and this is just lost in the middle of amateurism and professionalism. And so all these kind of incendiary, not such scrupulous type behavior, it's just, I don't like it. Don't like it.
Well, I can tell you this will make Iowa fans happy. There are examples of Iowa players, and again, I won't be specific, but Iowa players who have been poached, who are being poached, right? And I don't have any examples of any right now, but I can tell you a couple from the past. We won't get into specifics, but people who have literally had offers from Power 5 schools in other parts of the country that said, come here and this is what we'll give you. So that's actually happening. I want to make clear, it's not just agents trying to leverage. There's actually money being offered by these other institutions and their initiatives to get players to come in the transfer portal. And that's why you see so many guys, these players out there, Mark, what percentage of these players do you think would still be entering the transfer portal if there was no tampering whatsoever? How much would that kill the numbers down, do you think?
Oh, I think it would kill the numbers by 50 to 70%. That's just a guess.
Yeah, I agree. At least 50. I was going to say at least 50% in my opinion. And we're just guessing there. But I think that's how substantial it is. I mentioned an athlete that I know very well, who just transferred from a Power 5 school. And I mean, this young man, good player, wasn't playing a lot, got some snaps throughout the year, was playing for a Power 5 school this year, enters the portal. And before the window announced he's entering the portal, before the window is even open, he's getting calls from head coaches of G5 programs. I mean, it's like, and so some of these guys aren't even trying to hide it or be secretive or find a loophole. They're just doing it. They did this thing. Hey, who's gonna stop us? And nobody stopped.
Yeah, and much like politics in the real world in this country, I do believe that there would be a certain portion of those coaches who would rather not do that, but they know this is what's going on. So I have to join the competition and I have to operate like this as well, or I'm going to be thrown to the wayside and I'm not going to be able to improve my roster and I'm not going to be able to compete. So I got to join the fray and I've got to be able to operate in the same way. Is there another collective for Iowa, or is the Swarm it, or are there other collectives that are major components of this?
There's an Iowa City NIL collective that I don't even know if it's still, when this whole era first started up, that was announced that it was being formed, and I don't think it's anything, really. I don't think it's doing anything. It may not even be together anymore. I know, like, the Hawkeye wrestling program has its own collective. The Swarm is just part of funding for NIL cause with Iowa basketball, which is men's and women's, and then football. So, yeah, the Swarm is pretty much it as it relates to collective interests in NIL help for those three major sports.
One of the best running backs in the country, Quinshawn Judkins, just left Ole Miss a few days ago. And on the surface, there doesn't appear to be a reason why he would be leaving a situation where he's got an excellent coach as an offensive coordinator, a guy that is getting him the football, featuring him for the NFL. He's playing with a team that's loading up on transfer additions that is projected to be a top 5 to 10 team in the country next year. So on the surface, now some of these, there are cases where there are relationships that have gone sour between coach and player, or just doesn't like the situation, or of course is getting buried on the depth chart, but that's certainly not the case here. We're talking about one of the best backs in the nation, but boom, voila, shows up at Ohio State. So he's committed and signed. It's got to be an NIL deal situation.
I thought I saw something about Ole Miss asking him to leave. Am I not right on that?
Really?
What is
that?
This
would be a
again?
Shock to me.
What was his name?
Quinshawn Judkins.
How do you spell that?
Quinshon, Quinshawn Judkins, Judkins. Where Ole Miss
I'll have to
leave.
I thought I saw something about that, but
maybe while you're investigating that, possibly 5 scholarships over the limit. And it's not Kirk's style to ask anyone to leave. Like, Kirk would not be asking a quarterback who just threw 25 or 26 touchdowns to leave his program. They are going to have those conversations probably after spring practice to at least be honest with some players to try to nudge them out the door.
Well, yeah, if they don't do it, I mean, when does the portal window close? This portal.
So it's just closed. It has just closed
today.
I believe today or yesterday. It just closed, but there are still players in the portal who have yet to decide. Right. But it's closed. And there are some loopholes there. So we may hear of a few other guys jumping in, because there are a few loopholes there. And then we'll have another one right after spring practice.
Yeah, I can't find what I was seeing. And that may have just been a weird rumor, but if I see it, I'll send it to you later. But I did think that was odd when I saw it. I thought there's got to be something more going on besides just. So, I mean, is that basically it? I mean, you're an Ohio State guy, Mark. Is that basically you admitting Ohio State is tampering?
Well, it happened awfully quick. So I'm not either accusing or defending one or the other. It wasn't like a Riley Leonard to Notre Dame situation where even before the transfer portal opened that it was widely reported Riley Leonard is going to Notre Dame. Well, the portal hasn't even opened yet. It wasn't quite that bad, but it was rather quick. Now, he did visit campus before the commitment and the signing was announced.
And when Riley Leonard, I thought if you go to Duke, you're supposed to be the epitome of ethics and morality.
No, you're supposed to be smart.
Oh,
You're
okay.
intelligent. That
Gotcha.
doesn't mean those other things go along with that.
Yeah.
And I'm not picking on Riley Leonard, but that's exactly the way it played out. Now, the Quinshon Judkins, he just announced this 4 or 5 days ago because I remember when it happened. And I was doing a live stream about whatever the big, probably the playoff, obviously, or the championship game. And then that news broke. And no. Anyway, I'm getting my timeline confused because that was probably when the news broke, yes, that he had signed with Ohio State. So several days before, when he announced he was in the portal, there were people immediately saying he's going to Ohio State. He's going to Ohio State. So it was out there somewhere.